Holy words long reserved for our walk in this world. They resound with God's own heart. Oh, let the ancient words impart. Words of life, words of hope, give us strength, help us cope in this world where'er we roam. Ancient words will guide us home. Ancient words ever true, changing me and changing you. We have come with open hearts. Oh, let the ancient words impart. Holy words of our faith, handed down to this age, come to us through sacrifice. Oh, heed the faithful word of Christ. Holy words long preserved for our walk in this world. They resound with God's own heart. Oh, let the ancient words impart. Ancient words ever true, changing me and changing you. We have come with open hearts. Oh, let the ancient words impart. Ancient words ever true, changing me and changing you. We have come with open hearts. Oh, let the ancient words impart. Ancient words ever true, changing me and changing you. We have come with open hearts. Oh, let the ancient words impart. We have come with open hearts. Oh, let the ancient words impart.
And good afternoon. Welcome to Searching for the Truth. It is a beautiful Friday afternoon. A little warm outside. Cloudy. Got that chance of rain this afternoon. But then what's supposed to happen tonight is front comes through and it's supposed to feel like fall tomorrow. It's supposed to feel good, and looking forward to that. Good to have everybody with us this afternoon. We've got several who have already tuned in. Thank you very much. Please like and share. Go ahead and also, if you can, follow us on YouTube. And that way you'll be notified every time that we go live. Follow us there. Follow us on Facebook and share. Encourage your friends also to join us and to follow. Appreciate Truth and Reason being with us again this afternoon. Lori is here. Thank you, Lori. Carl is in Santa Rosa, New Mexico. Stay safe while you're traveling on the roads out there, Carl. So good to have everybody with us. James is running just a little late. Christopher is with us again this afternoon. So looking forward to him. And you might as well just take James's seat. Make James sit back there.
No, I can't do that to him. No. He'll be here in a minute.
He said he will be. Speak. Let me see. Can I hear you?
Can you? I turned it on. Is it?
Oh, no, I can't hear you yet. Oh, there we go.
Okay, maybe now.
Oh, now we got you.
Now we're good. Good?
Now,
all right.
Now I got you.
Yeah, well, James will be here in a minute. I can't take his spot. That's his spot.
Okay. Well,
We'll be
You're
fine.
You're
We'll be
much
fine.
nicer than I am.
It's okay.
Oh, well, today we're going to continue our discussion on, is it reasonable to believe in God? And on Wednesday afternoon, we began talking about this, and we were looking at the most reasonable cause for the universe and for its function, all that, the design that is apparent in the creation of the universe. And I thought that was very, all the feedback and everything that we got was very encouraging and enlightening and beneficial. Today, we're going to shift just a little bit, and we're going to talk about the most reasonable cause or source for life. And what is the most reasonable explanation for the complexities of life that we see, that we know exist? That's what we're going to be talking about today. Jeff's with us again. Jeff Asher, good to have you, brother. I hope that you are almost 100%. If you're not, and by the way, Jeff being on here, Jeff was really concerned that he wasn't going to be able to make the debate later this month in Athens, Alabama, and he had back surgery and recovering well, and he was really optimistic that he was going to be able to be there. And then, lo and behold, the debate got canceled or postponed till next year. So, anyway, looking forward though, next year, hopefully that will certainly take place. Bruce Reeves and Joel Ellis is going to be debating the subject of election. Is it unconditional election or is it corporate election? The doctrine of free will. Those are some of the issues that will be discussed in that particular discussion. Jim, I hope I can last that long. Well, me too, brother. I hope so. I'm looking forward to that. And I was really looking forward to being with everyone in Athens, Alabama. It'll just be a couple of weeks from now, but it's not going to happen. So anyway, all right, let's get on with it. James still isn't here, so James is going to miss out. What is the most reasonable cause for life? Where did life come from? What about the complexities of life? The irreducible complexities?
Yeah, they're just some things that you can't reduce any further and still have it be the object that it is, whatever it may be.
Exactly. The psalmist said in Psalm 139 verse 13, "For you formed my inward parts. You covered me in my mother's womb. I will praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are your works, and my soul knows very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in secret and skillfully wrought in the lowest parts of the earth. Your eyes saw my substance, being yet unformed, and in your book they all were written, the days fashioned for me, when as yet there were none of them." The Bible clearly tells us that God created man. He created life, Genesis chapter 1. Okay? All life, plant life, animal life, human life, and I will even submit to you spiritual life. I mean, period. Mm-hmm. All life came from God. And so from a rock. Yeah, that's. I don't think that's the most logical or reasonable explanation for the source or cause of life. I don't. Jeff, you know what? I have never said this before. I don't think. Maybe I have. I just don't remember it. Jeff, you're wrong. If that is the rock is the cause for the existence of life. That's the atheist answer.
Unless we start seeing things spring out of rocks.
Well, then, although God did use dirt.
Yeah. And he did tell Moses to strike the rock.
Yeah.
So maybe we could string something together. Yeah. I like the part in Psalm 139 where it says, "I am fearfully and wonderfully made." And when you consider how complex the human body is and how amazing it is, two Saturdays ago, I cut my finger on the table saw. I almost lost my middle finger. I thought I was going to. And it's incredible how in 2.5 weeks, it's pretty much back to the way it should be, and I can play the piano. I thought I might have lost the middle digit, like the top of it. It was scary when it happened, and but it's just
I know people
incredible.
who've lost their entire
Yeah,
yeah.
the whole row of them, right? And
Yeah.
I was just so thankful that God saved me from my own stupidity enough
Tablesaws
to
can do that.
Yeah, it was a split
That's
second.
That's what chance. Yeah, but
And it's just fearfully made, the way the body's designed and how it can self-heal, and even with just, I mean, think of our skeletons. I mean, people that celebrate, Halloween, they dress up like skeletons because they're scary, but it is such an amazing design.
Yeah.
And how do you
strong.
replicate that? I mean, you could say, well, we can use carbon fiber.
Just think about what all the billions of years of trial and error did accidentally.
Right. And it all just came together. Is it reasonable to believe that? And I don't believe that can be. It is more reasonable to believe in God when you look at the complexity of life.
Exactly. So, again, we quoted from Richard Dawkins last Wednesday.
Right.
Again, natural selection, he said, the blind, unconscious, automatic process, which Darwin discovered and which we now know, which we now
assert,
is the explanation for the existence and apparently purposeful form of all life, has no purpose in mind, has no mind. It does not plan for the future. It is the blind watchmaker. And we don't know anything. By the way, here's Richard Dawkins, and this comes from a movie by Ben Stein called Expelled, No Intelligence Allowed. This was a very good movie. This was back from 2008.
Yeah, I don't think I saw that.
The way that academia restricts those who believe in intelligent design, they're blackballed in the academic world. And that's what the movie was really about. But he has an interview at the end of the movie with Richard Dawkins.
Well, then how did it get created?
Well, by a very slow process.
Well, how did it start?
Nobody knows how it started. We know the kind of event that it must have been. We know the sort of event that must have happened for the origin of life.
What was that?
It was the origin of the first self-replicating molecule.
Right. How did that happen?
I told you we don't know.
So you have no idea how it started?
No, nor has anybody.
Nor has anyone else. What do you think is the possibility that intelligent design might turn out to be the answer to some issues in genetics or in evolution?
It could come about in the following way. It could be that at some earlier time, somewhere in the universe, a civilization evolved by probably some kind of Darwinian means to a very, very high level of technology and designed a form of life that they seeded onto perhaps this planet. Now, that is a possibility and an intriguing possibility. And I suppose it's possible that you might find evidence for that if you look at the details of biochemistry, molecular biology. You might find a signature of some sort of designer.
Wait a second. Richard Dawkins thought intelligent design might be a legitimate pursuit?
And that designer could well be a higher intelligence from elsewhere in the universe.
Well,
but that higher intelligence would itself have had to have come about by some explicable or ultimately explicable process. It couldn't have just jumped into existence spontaneously. That's the point.
So Professor Dawkins was not against intelligent design, just certain types of designers, such as God.
Yeah. Such as God. That's only, It's all about, as long as it's not God.
As long as it's
we'll
not
believe
God.
anything. We will believe, as Jeff Asher says, little green men created life on some other planet where the Darwinian means of evolution, naturalistic evolution, could take place. Because, listen, this is what we now know. It couldn't have taken place here.
Right.
That is impossible.
Right. So really, they're just pushing back the start date even further into the eons.
Well,
like a whole evolution of a whole nother universe that then came over here and started ours.
Sure, another universe, maybe even another dimension.
Or like in Marvel, the multiverse, that's why they're pushing and promoting those.
Or like
those
the
ideas.
latest, or not the last, because there's been a more recent
for
Indiana Jones movie, but the one, the Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull.
For sure.
That was, you saw that movie about.
Same kind of idea.
Yeah.
So some intelligent race that came and gave us all of our technology.
Yeah. So
Sounds a lot like a creator of some kind.
it just seems like God is the most reasonable
Mhm.
answer to all of that.
Yeah.
And we certainly have evidence of that.
Right.
So the law of cause and effect, as we talked about on Wednesday, states that every material effect must have an adequate cause that existed before the effect. Well, okay, biological life is comprised of materials that work together to produce biological reproduction and function. How does that happen? What is the most adequate cause that we can logically and reasonably establish that would fit the necessary requirements? An adequate cause for life.
Well, the folks that try to dispel the notion of God or the idea of God automatically write him off the bat. I mean, it was amazing to see that clip where he basically admitted that there could have been an intelligent design source, even though he wouldn't attribute it to a
Well, it
God.
couldn't have been God because
Right.
whoever it was that created life
Right.
or that designed life,
Higher level of technology,
had,
whatever.
that whatever it was had to come from a Darwinian. It's
Why?
like Darwinian means the Darwinian means of evolution, naturalistic
Right.
evolution is the default. It's the have to have. It is something that, that's our ground
Right.
that we ain't moving off of regardless.
Right.
And whatever model that we accept or whatever cause for life we accept has to fit within that model.
Right. We'll make
Because
it fit.
we're so smart, we
Yeah.
figured out that that's the way it's got to be.
Right.
Again, that's just, atheists claim science has proven their position. No, it hasn't. The Darwinian means of naturalistic evolution has not been proven
Mhm.
at all.
And it
In
can't
fact,
be.
It's been disproven.
And it can't be.
If you want to know the truth about it, you're right. It can't be because it is.
So it's not really a matter of science at that point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Jeff says, sounds like science fiction, panspermia. Yeah. Transpermia, panspermia. There are a couple of different concepts out there. Yes. Life was seeded here from a far away race, planet, aliens who came here, or maybe it just got here on a meteor.
So what they're doing is they're at the very beginning ruling out God, or
Hey, we
a
gotta do
lesser
that.
watered down version, say intelligent design, and then okay, with those two off the table, what could it be?
Oh.
And that's kind of where they go with it.
It could be all kinds of things.
Yeah,
Just
it can be aliens even now.
It can be aliens.
Yeah.
Yet the question of how and when life began cannot be scientifically proven. That we know.
It can't be reproduced.
No. An adequate explanation for the obvious complexities in the design of living things cannot be answered by science.
Yeah.
Okay. Because we weren't there to observe it.
Right.
And it cannot be reproduced.
That's the idea. Yeah.
So we got a problem. Robert Jastrow, evolutionary astronomer and founder and former director of the Goddard Institute for Space Studies at NASA, said, at present, science has no satisfactory answer to the question of the origin of life on the Earth. Perhaps the appearance of life on the Earth is a miracle. Scientists are reluctant to accept that view, but their choices are limited. Either life was created on the Earth by the will of a being outside the grasp of scientific understanding, or it evolved on our planet spontaneously through chemical reactions occurring in non-living matter lying on the surface of the planet.
Well, it's kind of like, you remember that joke that someone said that they went to God and they said, well, God, I've figured it out, you know that one, right? And God says, okay, go ahead and do it. Then he says, okay. And then he reaches down to get some dirt. And God says, get your own dirt.
That's my dirt.
Yeah. Get your own dirt. So, you have this non-living matter lying on the surface of the planet. Where did that come from? You still haven't answered anything.
No, good question. He goes on, the first theory places the question of the origin of life beyond the reach of scientific inquiry.
Exactly.
It is a statement of faith. And that's, Jeff said, talk about a leap of blind faith, or talk about blind leap of faith.
Yeah.
He says, It is a statement of faith in the power of a supreme being, not subject to the laws of science. The second theory is also an act of faith. The act of faith consists in assuming that the scientific view of the origin of life is correct without having concrete evidence to support that belief. So which one is more logical?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We'll talk about that.
What's more reasonable?
That's right. That's where we're going. That's what we're going to look at. Here's the idea. Okay, you got enough time. 4.5 billion years, they assumed at one point, was enough time. But you add chance to that, and you give it enough time and enough chances, eventually you'll have life.
I like Fred Flintstone there. It's nice.
Eventually.
Right.
That's what they assume.
Well, it's what they assert. I had a friend, we were having this discussion, and I just said, they were basically saying that our position and everything that we see here today, given enough time, had to occur.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so then I zeroed in on what he said. I said, so you're saying, and I actually read it back to him the way he said it, so you're saying given enough time, this had to happen.
Well, we see it.
And I said, so you're saying it happened. So it had to happen.
How did it happen?
Right. So it had to happen given enough time. So time is the great miracle worker.
Yes. Time is the great miracle worker.
But they were actually upset with me repeating back what they said, because they said, oh, no, it didn't have to happen. But they're still having to answer the question, why did it happen? So you're still in this conundrum where you're wanting it to be all by chance, like the random chance, right?
Mm-hmm.
That chart, time plus chance. And they're going to say, well, chance means it could or could not happen.
That's right.
But the fact that it did happen,
and what
then they say, well,
chances?
because it did happen, then given enough time, it had to have happened.
Well, what are the odds?
Right.
And how much time do you have to work the odds
right
into the realm of a possibility?
It's almost like a manifest destiny that it had to occur, though, even though they still want to say, well, no, because no one's telling it to happen, because it's all random. It's the blind watchmaker, whatever it may be, right?
What we're being told, okay, and this is from a PBS Nova film, The Miracle of Life. This is from 1998, so going back a few years. 4.5 billion years ago, the young planet Earth was almost completely engulfed by the shallow primordial seas. Powerful winds gathered random molecules from the atmosphere. Some were deposited in the seas. Tides and currents swept the molecules together, and somewhere in this ancient ocean, miracle of life happened.
Wow.
The first organized form of primitive life was a tiny protozoan. Millions of protozoa populated the ancient seas. These early organisms were completely self-sufficient in the sea water world. They moved about with their aquatic environment, feeding on bacteria and other organisms. Where'd that come from? From these one-celled organisms evolved all life on Earth. Wow.
I want to ask where the wind came from.
Where did any of it come from?
Right.
Now, this goes back to 1954. And this is George Wall, an atheist long time ago, and long since dead. He's not an atheist anymore either, by the way. This is what he says: given enough time, and this is what he believed, and this is what they believed at that time, 2 billion years.
Yeah.
The impossible becomes possible. And here's your point. The possible becomes probable. The probable becomes certain. Time performs the miracle.
That's exactly what he believed.
But wait a minute. 2 billion years? Oh, wait a minute. 2 billion years wasn't enough time. Could not have happened. It is impossible that it could have happened in 2 billion years. So we got to make it 4.5 billion years.
Yeah.
But here's the problem.
I'll keep stretching it.
Yeah.
Come on in, James. I got your spot saved here. Come on in.
So the oldest evidence of life on Earth about 3.9 billion years ago. Really, I'd like to know, their whole means of calculating time.
I got this.
All the means of measurements that they may use.
Well, that's what they have to keep doing, is keep stretching it more and more time because they're starting to realize that the amount that they picked before, like millions,
Mhm.
is no longer enough time.
No millions.
Yeah.
It's got to be billions. Of
Okay,
course,
yeah.
this goes back to the Miller-Urey experiment back in 1953. And but one of the interesting things that I believe actually came from this experiment, and although it did shake many people's faith at the time, I mean, it was touted as the great find of the century or millennium, or I don't know what's the word for a billion years.
Eons of time.
Or millions of, anyway, it was really something great. They demonstrated through this experiment that, well, you could come up with amino acids that were the building blocks for life.
Mm-hmm.
Well, through the through the experiment that they performed, they did come up with these, or some of these, not all of them, but some of the amino acids. And as they continued to run the experiment, they came to realize that, hey, there is a possibility here of these amino acids being accidentally formed after so many, certain conditions and so much time. Okay, so you got the amino acids. This takes me back to the illustration that I used Wednesday. Even though you may even have all of the components necessary to build a house, and you may have more than sufficient components to build a house in Lowe's or Home Depot.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, you've got enough material in Home Depot or Lowe's to build several houses.
Right.
But how many times are all these components going to accidentally come together and form a house?
Right.
Never.
Well, so even the experiment required him designing that setup to perform that experiment. I don't know if anyone thought of that.
Oh, yeah.
That's just like,
Well,
it required precise engineering to create the little results that they came up with.
Yeah.
It requires intelligence.
Yeah.
To do that.
Exactly.
Yeah. Let's see. Jeff says this is where the resurrection is what matters. This is the historical evidence that answers all questions pertaining to power and design.
And that was the emphasis that the Christians put on it, in the first century.
Oh, good afternoon, Charlene. Truth and Reason says the 50s was a big decade for science fiction. Yes, it was.
Yeah.
Absolutely. 50s and 60s, by the way. Star Trek, of course, you had,
It's continued to go on since then with
Yeah,
Star
going to the
Wars
moon and everything.
else.
Well, with the atomic bomb, you had all these monster movies because of the effect of man on the environment, really.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that was intelligent design.
Talking about the science fiction movies.
Well, talking about the Urey-Miller experiment. But making the building blocks of life is easy. Okay. That's what Paul Davies said. But just as bricks alone don't make a house, so it takes more than a random collection of amino acids to make life. They have to be put together in an enormous, gigantic, complex
complex design.
system.
Especially to reproduce as far as life goes.
Just put it this way.
It's so much required.
A house accidentally forming from the rubbing together of the materials in Lowe's or Home Depot. A house would be a whole lot easier to happen than for life to accidentally exist from the rubbing together of these amino acids. I'm going to make that charge. That is the truth. Because of the exceedingly elaborate way that life exists and continues to exist and reproduces, it's just even more than impossible.
Well, back to 139, Psalm 139, I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. Mm-hmm. It is an incredibly complex system, and to reproduce itself, but also you think every moment you're one breath away from not being alive because you require oxygen, you require, all these things that there's this very narrow room where you're alive.
DNA. Let's talk a little bit about DNA. And that's kind of where Jeff is going here. The cell can do that with design, but can that cell be produced randomly? No. DNA, nucleic acid, it contains all the genetic instructions specifying the biological development of all cellular forms of life. The complexity of DNA is something that we have come to learn far exceeds our ability to fully understand. So we're kind of in the dark still with all the technological advances that we've made of how all of this works. Now we know a lot. For example, your DNA has over 3 billion base pairs of 4 chemicals: adenine, cytosine, thymine, and guanine. These 4 base pairs form together and put together forms a code. It's much like a computer code with the numbers. If you had just
Like binary code.
Sure. Okay. 1 0 1 0 0.
Yeah. This time you got 4.
Yeah, but now that's right. You got 4 in this.
But each one of these is made up of a whole string of atoms.
That is correct. So it becomes more and more and more and more complex. Book by Stephen C. Meyer called Signature in the Cell. And by the way, that was something that Richard Dawkins said in the video clip. Remember, he said perhaps we could find a signature in the cell. Well, Stephen C. Meyer wrote a book called Signature in the Cell. And he asked some pretty important questions. Where does the information found in DNA come from? The information that you find in DNA can only come from intelligence. It requires, in and of itself, an intelligent designer. It could not exist, cannot exist, impossible to exist without it.
What's an easy way to? Can you think of a way to break that down to a layman?
Well, I don't know. This is what Stephen Meyer says on page 16 of that book. Whatever information is, whether thought or an elaborate arrangement of matter, because that, whether it's a code in computer programming or whatever it may be, that's a language. Okay, that's information. So his argument is whatever information is, whether thought or an elaborate arrangement of matter, one thing seems clear. What humans recognize as information certainly originates from thought, from conscious or intelligent activity. Mm-hmm. Our experience of the world shows that what we recognize as information invariably reflects the prior activity of conscious and intelligent persons.
Mm-hmm.
This is the argument, I've heard this made for a long time, which is we talk about natural laws. Well, that implies the lawgiver,
That's right.
Separate and apart from the law itself. Above and
right.
Yeah.
And the level of intelligence also gives an indication of the type of intelligence used to design that communication.
Right.
See?
Look how long it's taken us to figure out just a small part of it.
Yeah.
So it has to be somebody a whole lot smarter than men, including the scientists.
That would be kind of a natural law, wouldn't it? Just a foregone conclusion.
This is kind of similar to the teleological argument, isn't it?
Yes.
The design argument. You think about you get a cookbook and it's full of recipes. I love pecan pie. We're getting closer to Thanksgiving, right? And you can have all the ingredients there, or you could have the pie, and you don't. And you have to figure, like you go to a restaurant, you get a meal that you really love, and you're like, I got to figure out how that's made, right? And then you figure it out, and finally, my wife is so good, she can figure it out, and she'll get something that almost tastes that good or better than the original that I liked, right? And she'll tweak it, right? The recipe and the product are two different things. The DNA the information that creates, they're two separate things. So they're not one and the same. So the one is created by the other. Where did that information come from?
That's a good question. In fact, as you go on and think about this, here's another quote from Daryl Kotz. Says the information in DNA is sufficient for directing and controlling all the processes which transpire within a cell, including diagnosing, repairing, and replicating the cell. Think of an architectural blueprint having the capacity of actually building the structure depicted in the blueprint or on the blueprint, of maintaining that structure in good repair, and even replicating.
Isn't that incredible? Isn't that incredible?
All of this in DNA.
And that includes taking in other substances for food and for growth and for
Energy.
reproduction. I mean, we're not even getting into the reproduction part so much.
Not yet.
This is a cellular level.
No, this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah,
This
that's
is
right. That's
a
right.
very, very surface level
Yeah.
discussion of this.
I'd like to have a car that did that.
Yeah, really.
It maintained itself, diagnostic.
I'm telling you.
Yeah.
DNA, okay, DNA, RNA, proteins are mutually interdependent. Another very important point. They cannot exist and function without the other. So how can you have one existing and functioning before the existence of the other? You can't.
It's the irreducible complexity, right?
That is the irreducible complexity argument. Okay. And so if you have one without the other, you don't have function.
You don't have anything.
Life. You don't have it. So DNA stores the genetic information and copies it to RNA. And of course, the proteins and everything working together duplicates it. RNA directs the synthesis of the proteins. The proteins carry out the work essential to cell existence and reproduction. And the process is so complex, we can't really get too far into it. Even Sir Francis Crick recognized if a particular amino acid sequence was selected by chance, how rare an event would this be? The great majority of sequences can never have been synthesized at all at any time. Okay, well, Sir Francis Crick was one of the Nobel Prize winners for sharing in the discovery of DNA. Okay, so we're going back to the origin of the guy who discovered it. An honest man, this is what he says, armed with all the knowledge available to us now, could only state that in some sense the origin of life appears at the moment to be almost a miracle. So many are the conditions which would have had to have been satisfied to get it going.
Yeah, but that really brings it back to the how can you get the DNA and the RNA, simultaneously to work together.
Mr. Crick knew it was impossible. Much like Sir Fred Hoyle. In this quote, the likelihood of the spontaneous information or the spontaneous formation of life, the likelihood of the spontaneous formation of life from inanimate matter is 1 to a number with 40,000 noughts after it. So you're telling me there's a chance?
Yeah, exactly.
It is big enough to bury Darwin and the whole theory of evolution, he says. The theory that life was assembled by an intelligence has, we believe, a probability vastly higher than that. Indeed, such a theory is so obvious, one wonders why it is not widely accepted as being self-evident.
Well, the answer to that is because people are deliberately running away from God, the creator.
Right. That's what I said near the beginning, is that if you rule out God or an intelligent designer right at the forefront and then say, okay, now how did it happen? You might come to some of the conclusions they're trying to come up with, whether it's aliens from another intelligent planet millions of years away or,
But still, you're conceding intelligent origin.
In that one, yeah.
But then you have to ask, where did they come from?
Right, but so they're not answering the question.
So the whole concept of evolving is not even proved. It doesn't even have a foundation, really.
They really, and even Richard Dawkins understands this point. Okay, it couldn't have accidentally happened here. It had to therefore happen somewhere else. It had to be, it had to have a beginning somewhere else. And with all appearances that we have available to us, it was designed. Okay. And
Well-
even Richard Dawkins admitted that.
But yeah, because our
So-
world is perfect for sustaining life that we have that is here.
Mm-hmm.
So if the aliens were just throwing it everywhere, you know, and it just didn't take because they went everywhere. That's the only other explanation you can give.
Sir Fred
But that doesn't
Hoyle
work either.
also said, the current scenario of the origin of life is about as likely as the assemblage of a 747 by a tornado whirling through a junkyard. So you're telling me there's a chance?
He's like, tell me what you really think. You know,
What are the odds of that happening, y'all? Come on. What are the odds?
and so the whole question we've had the whole time: is it reasonable to believe in God? I believe it is.
He goes on. He says, life cannot have had a random beginning. Troops of monkeys thundering away on random typewriters could not produce the works of Shakespeare for the practical reason that the whole universe is not large enough to contain the necessary hordes of monkeys or the necessary typewriters, and certainly not the waste paper baskets required for the dispositions of wrong attempts. The same is true for living materials. They know. We ought to know. Harvard grad research scientist Robert Hazen said it is possible that life emerged by an almost infinitely improbable sequence of difficult chemical reactions. If life is the result of an infinitely improbable succession of chemical steps, then any scientific attempt to understand life's origin is doomed to failure. Such a succession could not be duplicated in a program of lab experiments.
So he's kind of knocking what they did in 1953.
Yeah, if the origin of life was an infinitely improbable accident, then there's absolutely nothing you or I or anyone else could do to figure out how it happened. I must tell you, that's a depressing thought to someone like me who has devoted a decade to understanding the origin of life.
Well, it's another way of saying that it's beyond the realm of science because it's not observable, repeatable, to be tested.
That,
As a hypothesis.
exactly.
That's why Darwin is not, fact. It can't be proven as fact.
Right.
It's impossible.
So, an accident? No. And Richard Lewontin is, give him kudos for almost being honest here. He says our willingness to accept scientific claims against common sense is the key to an understanding of the real struggle between science and the supernatural. We take the side of science in spite of the patent absurdity of some of its constructs, in spite of the tolerance of the scientific community for unsubstantiated just so stories, because we have a prior commitment to naturalism.
At least he's honest.
That's what you call willful ignorance, actually. That's what Peter called it.
Yep. It is not that the methods and institutions of science somehow compel us to accept a material explanation of the phenomenal world, but on the contrary, that we are forced by a prior adherence to material causes to create an apparatus of investigation and a set of concepts that produce material explanations, no matter how counterintuitive, no matter how mystifying to the uninitiated.
Yep. So that's what we were saying at the beginning, that a priori adherence to it.
Wow. So, spontaneous generation, impossible. Okay. We know that life could not have accidentally occurred here. It couldn't happen. Scientists now admit that. Richard Dawkins admits that. But not just the cause, but what about the continued existence and the reproduction of life, the growth of life, and the organization, if you will, of life, and the products that we see of various forms of life. All of this together screams designer and a masterful one. That.
Especially when you think about ecology and all the various species and how they're interdependent. You have parasites, you have hosts, you have a symbiotic relationship
You
between
have predators,
many
you have prey.
animals.
Yeah,
You know, it
yeah.
just
Yeah.
a variety, and all that also interfacing with plants, you know, for food and
Even
it
just like the human digestion
it's
system,
beyond-
like probiotics and you know all the different things that are
Mhm.
part of your body's system that are. It's just like
Just what about a
incredible.
cell? Just one cell. Richard Dawkins says the cell's nucleus contains a digitally coded database larger in information content than all 30 volumes of the Encyclopedia Britannica put together. And this figure is for each cell, not all the cells of a body put together. In fact, I heard it illustrated one time that you could take all the information in a cell and you could put it, you know, in book form. And then you could take all the information out of every cell in a human body, just one human body, and put it all in book forms. And you would have, and just for each cell, have one book per cell. Okay. And you stack them up, okay, all the way to the moon. Not just once, not just twice, not just 30 times. I think it was 3,000 times. Something like that. I'm actually forgetting. I was like,
incredibly.
yeah.
Yeah.
How
much
Okay.
information, right?
So even the simplest of life forms are highly sophisticated. Biological machinery.
So Darwin
It's
did not
best.
believe that. He didn't think that. He was thinking that primordial ooze, the very simple cells, you know, and then
Simplistic.
they just become more complex, and then at some point they gain intelligence and crawl up on land. You know, you've seen the pictures of the way they describe it. He would have had no knowledge of anything.
That's right. There was no knowledge of this. Okay. The more we know, the less excuse we have.
Right.
Okay. And that's one of the things. That's
I mean,
Paul-
just in one cell.
right. And Paul points out, you know, that the things that are made should leave us without. Well, it does leave us without excuse.
Mm-hmm.
But as you look even deeper into the things that God has
Things
made,
don't
the
get
we
more
look-
basic; they get more complex the deeper you look.
Absolutely. Every cell has its own power plant. Every cell, modifies its own proteins and creates, builds, reproduces. It's got its own dump. Okay, just like a city. You know, every city has to have its own power plant. It has to have, it has it.
Sure.
It's able to function by all the working parts working together.
In one cell.
Wow. That's what we have in one cell. A cell would not really be alive or survive unless all life functions became operable at once.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, again, the argument of irreducible complexity. So how did even a simple single cell organism evolve?
Right. It required so many things just to be.
Michael Behe, in his book, Darwin's Black Box, it's right here. Okay. An irreducible complex system is one that requires several closely matched parts in order to function, and where removal of one of the
Right.
components effectively causes the system to cease functioning.
Mhm.
Yeah. There it is. There's your mousetrap. That's
There's-
exactly what I was thinking.
There's your
Yeah.
mousetrap. Okay. How many parts of a mousetrap
Yep.
do you have to remove before it starts functioning? This is a simple, very simple design.
Yeah.
Okay. There are more elaborate mousetraps that people have
For
made.
sure. There's
but
always a new mousetrap.
this is, yeah, but everybody's inventing more newer model mousetraps.
Exactly.
But this one has proven to work pretty
sure.
well.
Yeah. What
over
could you
time.
remove and it still be a mousetrap?
Well, you can't remove the spring, okay, and it still
Right.
work. It would not function. You can't remove anything.
Right.
No, the wood base.
So it couldn't have evolved from
the-
just a board and
the
then a
rod
board
holding
with a wire and then a board with a spring and then
Okay.
finally the little trigger mechanism and then teach itself how to load the cheese.
Well, this is a
I
functioning
know
piece of
it's-
machinery,
yeah.
but a very simplistic functioning
For
piece
sure.
of machinery. In fact, you better be very careful when you're putting the cheese on the little thingy there,
Or taking it off.
because it will get you. But how What are the odds that this device accidentally came into being? How could it?
I do see the name of the company is photoshopped out of out of the picture. It even has a stamp. Who produced it.
Again, Michael B. He says, in short, highly sophisticated molecular machines control every cellular process, transport information, flip switches on and off, conduct electrical currents, manufacture molecules, move around, etc. Thus, the details of life are finely calibrated, and the machinery of life enormously complex. Enormously complex.
And everybody knows that.
We do now.
Yeah.
We do now. It's amazing. You can get your microscope and you can look at a cell and you can see it's moving around.
Mm-hmm.
And within it, if you get down inside of it, it's moving, its parts are moving and functioning. And then when you put all these cells, I mean, every cell in your body, has its purpose, right? You have, and I kind of learned this. I have Barrett's esophagus, and my gastroenterologist has told me, he's told me how that happens and what may be next and what we have to do to try to treat it and keep it where it's at and not let it get worse and turn into cancer and all those kinds of things. But what happens is eventually your cells in your stomach begin to come up into your esophagus, and your esophagus cells are overtaken by the stomach cells. They kind of replace them, and your stomach moves up further into your esophagus, which your esophagus is not designed to do and to be, and that causes all kinds of problems. So you've got stomach cells, and by the way, the acid that's produced in your stomach, that's some powerful stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So it takes a certain kind of conversion of energy. I mean, blood. Okay, you have blood cells, you have white blood cells, red blood, on and on and on. You have all different kinds of cells in your body.
Mm-hmm.
They all have their own specific purpose. And what happens when they get out of whack? When something gets messed up, things don't function like they're supposed to.
It's not like on the X-Men where it's you
Doesn't
get bit by a
mutate to
spider
some-
and
Yeah.
then now you can swing from buildings.
Yeah, now steel blades don't pop
Yeah.
out of my hand.
Right.
But all mutations are make things worse, not better.
That's
the thing people
that's right.
keep forgetting or overlooking.
Right.
That's right. Circulation, reproduction, growth, the eye is one of the most incredible things in our body. Of course, everything is really. It's just that the eye, when you think about the eye and what it takes for it to function, I mean, I've got an issue with my eyes. Just a genetic, something to do with my genetics anyway. My retina has started to detach, and so they've gone in there and fixed both of my eye. Had to fix both of my eyes because I have this genetic, whatever it is, that causes it. And but when you go to the doctor's office and you're looking at that eyeball and all the different parts.
Mm-hmm.
It's a complicated piece of machinery.
Yeah.
A lot more complicated than your camera.
Right.
On your cell phone. I mean, come on, it just accidentally happens.
Yeah, and
Don't buy it.
as good as the cameras are and the pictures they take, still nothing compared to actually seeing it with the eye
Nope.
Mhm.
itself.
Nope.
That's still a lot more to enjoy.
And when you think about the hearing, the smelling, the seeing, the tasting, okay, the feeling, everything about us,
Mm-hmm.
it's an accident. My friends, I don't have that much blind faith. I'm not that hard in my heart to the point where, there's only one possible answer for me. And that's a great, powerful, wise, intelligent designer. There's no other answer. just happened? Not a chance. So again, a cell would not really be alive or survive unless all life functions became operable at once. So how did even a simple single-celled organism evolve? For example, let's just say that my heart stopped beating. What would happen to all the cells in my body? You know, your cells are interdependent on each other.
Yep. It's a complex system that requires everything.
Yeah, and this goes back to Jeff's point at the beginning. If I can synthesize life here, then I will prove that no intelligence was required to produce life in the beginning.
Yeah, that's right. All that test you showed earlier, 1953, demonstrates that it took intelligence.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it takes intelligence to build a house. Well, how much more complicated and complex is a cell?
Mm-hmm.
Just one, much less all the cells combined, coming together and making up a living being, a person.
Sure. Yeah. It's more than just growing cells in a petri dish.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, think about all the things that life, that species do. I mean, explain how birds know to fly from one pole to the other.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, they've never been. Salmon, how do they know where they came from?
Right. Why do certain trees shed their leaves? We're getting into fall.
That's the thing I really appreciated when I was in Romania in the first snow. It was early fall. The snow was falling before some of the leaves had come off, and it's breaking limbs. And you see the wisdom of God in making evergreens, you know, with the kind of leaves where
it sheds on its own.
You know,
they're made differently.
They don't catch as much snow, and they can survive all the snowfall.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so much that's intertwined.
And those broadleaves, they fall off before the snow comes.
Exactly.
So the limbs aren't destroyed. There's lots of things about snow I learned just by observing winters in Romania.
Mm-hmm.
You have less light, but the whiteness of the snow makes it really brighter at night. What light there is reflected so well. Just a lot of wisdom that God had in designing snow.
Everything screams design.
Yeah, but we're focusing more on the life here.
Life. Oh yeah. I mean, there are natural processes, and we see the natural processes, but the order of that process of the natural processes and the makeup and how everything works together. We were talking earlier about prey and predators, and you know, you've got things that live off of other things. How does all of that? I mean, where did all of that come from?
So that's the thing.
Accident.
Well, that's the thing. Science can describe those processes, those natural processes, but they can't explain why they happen. I mean, they can look at it, observe, like we're observing why certain trees lose their leaves, they don't break the branches. Oh, well, that makes sense, right? But we still don't know how that happens. We don't know how that, you know what I'm saying? There's just the way it's designed, everything put together. We might even be able to move a tree to a different area and see something else happen. But the point is, at the end of the day, you can describe wood, you can describe stone, you can look at the mineral content. Where did it all come from?
Why does it work like it
why does it work? Why is water wet? You know, that sounds silly, but
then God said, let the waters abound with an abundance of living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the face of the firmament of the heavens. So God created great sea creatures and every living thing that moves, with which the waters abound according to their kind. By the way, everything produces after its kind. Every winged bird according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. And God blessed them, saying, be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters in the seas, and let birds multiply on the earth. You know, passage after passage. So the evening and the morning were the fifth day. You know, the cattle, God makes the cattle. And then God formed man. And as the psalmist said in Psalm 139, verses 13 through 16, which we read at the very outset of our study today, for you formed my inward parts, you covered me in my mother's womb. I will praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are your works, and that my soul knows very well. Without microscopes, without all the technology that we have now, people could look at life and see how amazing it was.
Mm-hmm.
But how much more now?
Right.
We are indeed, my friend, without excuse. So just as the Apostle Paul said, and by the way, you can read this, and going back to Richard Dawkins and what he had to say at the beginning when we played that little clip from him. For since the creation of the world is his invisible attributes are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. Because although they knew God, they did not glorify him as God, nor were thankful, but became futile in their thoughts, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Professing to become wise, they became fools. So foolish that you can sit there with a straight face and say, well, maybe aliens brought life here. Maybe it came on a meteorite at some point billions of years ago. But we just know that it couldn't have been. Why couldn't it have been God? Why not? It's everything screams creator, designer. Can't get around that point.
Right.
So we need to realize God has appointed a day in which he will judge man. And this goes to the point that Jeff made earlier. I mean, what about the resurrection? Notice, because he has appointed a day on which he will judge the world in righteousness by the man whom he has ordained, he has given assurance of this to all by raising him from the dead. What is the most reasonable explanation for the source, cause, and complexities of life? Y'all, what's the most
God.
reasonable explanation?
Well,
God.
absolutely God.
God.
Yeah.
God. That's the answer. And in fact, it seems so obvious. It is, shouldn't need to be talking about it, but sadly we do. Thank you, everybody, for being with us today. And if you have any questions or comments, we'd love to hear from you. We will continue this study on Monday afternoon, Lord willing. We're going to talk about morality and some other aspects of or questions that we may raise. Where do these things come from? And so hope that you can join us as we'll continue to talk about evidences and apologetics on Monday afternoon. And again, as always, if you have a question or comment, go ahead and send them in to us. You can email me at Don McClain at sbcglobal.net. Of course, you can also contact us through Facebook. Just private message me, instant message me through Facebook, or you can reach us through YouTube as well. You can wait till Monday afternoon when we're live, and you can give us a call at 1-855-568-1062. We'd be more than glad to do what we can to answer any questions or comments that you may have. Lord willing, we will be back on Monday afternoon at 3 p.m. Don't forget, if you're in Central Arkansas, we will be assembling here at 9 a.m. for Bible study at the Bryant Church of Christ at 9500 AR5 in Bryant, Arkansas. 9 a.m. for Bible study and 10 a.m. for worship. And again at 4 p.m. for worship. But if you're in Central Arkansas, look us up. We'd love to have you join us. My friend, not only is it reasonable to believe in God, it is unreasonable not to. Thank you, everybody. Thank y'all. Appreciate it. Y'all got any final thoughts, by the way?
Oh, I'm just Christopher Gardana. I'm the son-in-law of this guy.
Yeah.
Right, so somebody said on there, thank you, Don, James, and question mark. So that's
okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's okay.
Yep. Well, I need to put your picture up there, your name.
Oh, yeah.
I've got your picture, actually.
You might have one picture, yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
I do. Gotta put it on next time. Next time I know that you're going to be with us, I will see if I can have that up there. So thank you, everybody. Lord willing, we'll see you on Monday afternoon. Till then, may God bless. Hope that you have a great rest of your day. See you Monday afternoon, Lord willing.
Just as I am without one plea, but that thy blood was to thee, O Lamb of God, I come. I come. Just as I am, and waiting not to rid my soul of one dark blot, to thee whose blood can cleanse each thought, O Lamb of God, I come. I come. I come broken to be mended. I come wounded to be healed. I come desperate to be rescued. I come empty to be filled. I come guilty to be pardoned by the blood of Christ the Lamb. And I'm welcome with open arms, praise God, just as I am. Just as I am, I would be lost, but mercy and grace my freedom bought. And now to glory in your cross, O Lamb of God, I come. I come. I come broken to be mended. I come wounded to be healed. I come desperate to be rescued. I come empty to be filled. I come guilty to be pardoned by the blood of Christ the Lamb. And I'm welcome with open arms, praise God, just as I am. Praise God, just as